Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentary Club, a place for documentary lovers. I'm Jeff Jones, and with me always is Jack. Today, we're talking about Exhibit A documentary released on June 28th, 2019, and currently streaming on Netflix. But first, before we get to that, I'd like to do a proper welcome to Jack. Jack, how you doing today? How is it, buddy?
Pretty darn good. I want to welcome everyone to the chat, and always appreciate your comments and your thoughts about any particular documentary that we're looking at. This one here is a really interesting one too, and I enjoyed it. I've watched it a few times, and this review was also enjoyable.
There are 4 different episodes, and they each center kind of around a forensic technique. So I'll just go through them, just give a little brief overview of all the episodes. The first one, episode 1, is on video forensics, and then episode 2 is about blood splatter. That takes all of these use kind of some case to explain the science. Episode 2, blood splatter. Episode 3, they talk about cadaver dogs, and episode 4 is touch DNA. A 4-part series, but specialized in each one of these particular techniques. I liked all these. I had actually previously seen this documentary. Jack, anything else to add just before we get to our first clip?
Yeah, that's a really good rundown of each of the entire documentary. Interesting, these cases that they selected to show examples of what can go wrong when these particular fields of forensic, it's the investigative body, that the police use. I mean, even the defense lawyers use it.
If you would be so kind as to pick the first clip for us today.
Yeah, they're looking at an officer-involved shooting. They're just kind of explaining some of the process of what these investigators are doing. Going into the case that they talk about, which is George Powell case in Killeen, Texas.
The most interesting photogrammetry case that I've been involved in is the George Powell case in Texas.
How long are we getting?
1 hour.
That's it?
1 hour.
I'm innocent, and I need you guys' help as much as possible. From 2003 until 2008, I was here in Killeen, Texas, to promote my music.
I know he did a song about soldiers and stuff like that, and about the cops.
He just had soul in him. He just had soul. And he was about that street life, and he knew how to handle street life. The police always messed with him because he would see the police and start cussing at them.
George Powell had been really kind of a thorn in the side of the cops there in Killeen. But they were certainly looking at him, I think. I don't know George Powell. I mean, just from what we see in the documentary, he looks like just a guy. I mean, maybe not living his life the way that we would necessarily live ours, but that doesn't mean he's a bad person.
There were several aggravated robberies at convenience stores over a period of 2 or 3 weeks. Robber's wearing a baseball cap. He's wearing big sunglasses. He's got a gun. So the police believed it was all the same robber.
First thing I saw was the shining of the silver. He had a small silver gun. And she was trying to give him money.
Open the register, hurry up. That's it, where's the rest of it?
I just tried to remember every single thing I could about him.
You can see that she roughly hits the same mark on the door that the robber did, and she is 5'6". But then, of course, someone called into the Killeen Police Department Crime Stoppers, that offer cash rewards for anonymous information.
From a distance, you could probably say, well, I favor the dude in the face, okay? They could easily say, hey, it's this guy right here, and the police would be like, hey, they look alike. The difference is he's not my height.
Basically, what unfolds in this episode is they talk about how video footage can be used to help identify people, but it also is a tool to misidentify people if it's not used correctly.
Right. And, where it should be used to exclude someone. And, Powell is about 9 inches taller than this person that came to the counter that the cashier waited on him, said, "This is a short dude. I'm looking at him straight in his eye. I can't do that with George."
The thing about video is we have a tendency to look at it and believe it. But the reality is that video is inherently a trick. You have an individual who robs a store who shows up in the surveillance video. Images of this person was going through the doorway. What we do is look at the height of the individual in the video and determine whether you could include or exclude based on the height. Get the frames that we need, get measurements out of those, and be able to use them to show where things were, but also to be able to demonstrate differences in perspective. If you move from where this camera is over to here, then it changes the way the whole scene looks. When we presented that, it turned that case 180 degrees and it brought out what was really the truth there.
I gotta stop him here. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but
Ah.
he used the word "what's the truth," right? Truth is not
Right.
fact. I'm sorry, but we have to talk about fact. Fact, not truth. Everyone has their own truth. Your truth is different than my truth. They're
Well,
not
he just said
interchangeable.
they altered perspective, and this
There you
guy
go.
this guy's suddenly, 7 inches taller than the cashier said. Does that not matter? Come on, man.
Well, the fact that he says video is a trick. Okay, so in film school, we learned about the eye and the speed of the lens. And
Yep.
if you're going to say that video is a trick, then your eyes are a trick as well. I don't know how you, as an expert, and we'll find out later that he's not even he wasn't even trained on the software he used.
No, not at all.
I guess if you can claim to be an expert and get hired in court, hey, man, they pay you. You know?
Yeah, you can clearly tell when this other outfit overlaid it, that George is much taller at that door than this 5'6" dude that actually did the robbery.
Mr. Knox testified that the suspect was bending over going out the door. First of all, there's no evidence that he was leaning over. He might have been, but that wasn't the image that should have been used. There were hundreds and hundreds of other images of the individual standing, not moving. You could see from the other view that he was standing erect.
Knox was not even aware, evidently, that there were multiple cameras available, and he never went to the scene. He already knew how he wanted to come out.
Mr. Knox did not follow the methodology, and so this can't possibly be scientific and shouldn't get into court. Now we're into a subjective realm where an expert can do anything.
I believe we've established a overwhelming case of actual innocence, such that he should be released.
It says, in Africa, a thing is true at first light and a lie by noon, and you have no more respect for it than for the lovely, perfect, weed-fringed lake you see across the sun-baked salt plain. You have walked across that plain in the morning, and you know that no such lake is there. But now it is there, absolutely true, beautiful, and believable. Here you are, you've walked across the desert, you know that this lake isn't there, but here's this mirage in the afternoon. So that's sort of the thing that we do. But it's scientifically flawed to say that you can be certain about anything.
What?
Truth sometimes can seem perfectly believable. It can appear to be right there in front of you, but yet it doesn't really exist.
Come on.
Yeah, this guy's a little hard to digest here, because he's talking about mirages before in Hemingway's book.
Yep.
And now he's talking about you want something to be there, but it's really not there.
Who are you gonna
Correct.
believe? Me or
Yeah,
your
believe-
lying eyes? You know?
Believe what I'm going to create and show you from my perspective.
This guy, he keeps referring to himself as an expert, and
He's
it's
not.
just funny. Like, you're not an expert. You weren't even trained in the software that you used.
Nope.
You're telling people, although it looks like he's 6 foot, 5'9", he's actually 6'3", because of, I'm going to show you with my computer model that literally changes the model. It's upsetting, I guess, in so many ways, that you can just get a business license, call yourself Knox and Associates, just claim that you're an expert in this. Someone can call you, set up an appointment with you. You can fill out an invoice and call yourself an expert, and yet you have no expertise in it. You can do that as long as it's not like a certified position, like I'm a certified dive instructor, and you're telling people you are, and that's fraud. But here you can be like, well, this is my expert opinion, and I have these made up credentials. I've been doing this, and I have this computer and this technology, and I have this software. So therefore, hey, it's another opinion.
I can't agree with him. I don't agree with the way he looks at things. And now I do agree that there are, probably some older cameras that there could be some deception, like we saw with, how many frames per second is that camera lens actually catching, and somebody's firing a gun rapid fire. You're going to miss a bunch of the shots. Sure. Doesn't mean the shots didn't happen. They're just not captured on that camera.
And that's a really good point that is brought up in the documentary, that they have an actual expert who can attest to that.
We have to get those biases turned off and get people looking at and understanding evidence from the standpoint of knowing that it's not there. That lake doesn't exist. You see it, but it's not really there.
I don't know, dude. Sounds pretty fishy to me. That's how you have to get people to start accepting their evidence, that the lakes, I know you're looking at a lake, but you need to come from the standpoint that there is no lake. And if you can come at it from that standpoint, you can understand my scientific model.
Correct. He's trying to talk people into, buying the story. It's crazy, man.
Texas was the first to pass the junk science law in 2013. It allows those convicted using bad forensic science a second chance.
The Texas Forensic Science Commission looked at the complaint and found merit. They retained Grant Fredericks. He's not my expert. He's the state of Texas's expert.
My office got a call, like we do on any case, and I was asked to review an old case. At that point, I had no opinions. So I went to the jail, measured Mr. Powell using a 3D scanner with a laser tool that's universally used. With that model, we then went back to the scene, scanned the entire scene, so we can actually place the model of Mr. Powell into the scene. And wherever we place him, he is accurately represented within the geometry of that scene. But the actual picture, side by side, overlaid like that, is plain to anybody who looks at it that it's not him.
Wow, nice work. And that's how you do it, folks.
Absolutely. Exactly what you do.
There's one thing I wanted to point out, and there's a better shot of it in the documentary, but you can see these little hash marks on the door there that he's standing next to. Do you see how it's like in the frame of the door? There's 5, 6, and then I think it's a 7-foot mark. And I always wondered why convenience stores have a height measurement at the door like that. And after watching this video, now I understand why. To identify people going, if this is exactly why they have that, to identify people when you're walking out the door, to see how tall they are. Like, that's why so many convenience stores have height measurement right in the frame of the door at the entrance. I never really did. I always thought it convenient. Like, I could go and check my height at the convenience store. Have you noticed that, Jack?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes. I actually had a cashier explain that to me, because I had no idea what it was. And I got to be good friends with. I actually knew them kind of. I'm like, what the hell is this over here? It's like, so you can tell somebody is it.
If they rob the joint and they leave, then you can
right.
have a measurement for the camera.
Right. That's right.
It's so clever and yet so simple in its design. So why didn't they use that? You know what I mean? They never bring it up. They never talk about, well, this guy's standing pretty straight. He might be able to stand up in another ½ inch, but that's pretty much how tall this guy is. The one that you can see on the screen. There's Powell. He's a whole hash mark taller.
Oh, yeah. He's roughly 9 inches taller than this person that robbed the store. It's insane, man.
I can understand if you're off by a couple inches. You're like, well, he crouched down or he stood tall. Like, sure.
Well,
you can't make up 9 inches unless the guy's crawling out of there.
No way.
Absolutely ridiculous. So it does say that Powell was released on bond on September 25th, 2019. Powell was wrongfully incarcerated for this robbery.
I dug a little more. He got himself in trouble again. He got stopped and they found some meth on him, so his bond was revoked. I put him back in jail. I guess he's back. I guess he got out on bond again, but I haven't read any further.
Well, I really enjoyed episode 1.
Yeah.
about all I can add to it. I think it was good. I think they used the George Powell case effectively to demonstrate how you can have a questionable witness, questionable quote unquote expert, like you said, Jack. You can sway a jury with a trashy expert, and
Yes.
that's not a good system either. We could see some overhaul in that too. That you need to kind of have bona fides. You need to be an expert to actually call yourself an expert. You can't just say, well, today I'm an expert in camera equipment and this specialized software, and then the guy, it's still driving me nuts. He's saying suspend reality, suspend what you believe. Your eyes are lying to you, believe me. And then when you get to that point, then I'll show you the evidence, and it'll be so obvious that your eyes were lying to you. I just can't believe that the guy takes himself seriously. Something wrong with him.
And the judge did too, apparently.
We've talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect before, and sometimes have that really well, where he's so confident in what he's doing that he can kind of Jedi mind trick his way through it, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, episode 2, blood splatter, another cool episode. This is something that I have been interested in a long time. Blood splatter, I can't really get enough of it. I would love to do some of my own experiments someday if I can ever finish my own projects. But what was your overall impression of this one, Jack? Episode 2, blood splatter.
Really good. I think they portrayed things how they needed to portray them. A cold case like this can be drug out of the closet and re-looked at. So-called evidence was used. It's crazy, man. I was blown away, completely blown away.
I got to say that opening little intro there was very easy on the eyes. I really appreciated that, even though I don't think they were using real blood.
No, probably not. But
they're
very
talking
powerful.
about like blood does this, blood does that, blood is unique, and they're not even using real blood. Come on.
This segment revolves around a case between this man and a woman, and the guy is works in construction, and apparently he's just an absolute ass. He treats a lot of people that work for him really badly. Others, he doesn't like their work, a contract or something, he won't pay them, withhold their money, just all kinds of things. And so he's created a lot of enemies for himself in his life. Yeah, it leads into this guy. He's talking about this cold case that I guess the sheriff had said, hey, we wasn't able to do anything with this way back in the day. Maybe you can take another look at it. And this guy, he uses a microscope, and he's examining blood pattern. So he gets this. It's a nightgown that they had collected from the scene, and he puts it under this microscope, and it has all these spots on it. He says they're blood, but we found out more as time goes on.
Most of the time, looking for evidence, it's just time consuming. It really is. In 27 years of crime scene, I've never seen the exact same crime scene twice. The evidence is going to tell.
Honest to God, knew, I would tell you. I would have said back then, I didn't know.
What happened to the nightgown that you were wearing? There were some things on it that probably shouldn't have been there.
Was it Ed's blood? It can't be.
It's a little microscopic.
It can't be. I did not do that.
I couldn't imagine that happening to me. Could you imagine that happening to you?
No. And there's also a message. I'm not sure if it's in this clip or let's see if I got it marked. Somebody left a voicemail that said they were going to kill him. This was a week before he was shot.
You really got to make someone angry for them to trash your house and scratch out your pictures and shred your clothes. You don't withhold people's check, number one. Like the guy didn't deserve to die, but you don't withhold people's checks like that. That is the dirtiest of the dirty. That's all I'm going to say about someone who used to work for a living in construction and If you were to and just to get by, you need the money, and then your boss is going to withhold it on you at the last second. Oh,
Right.
I mean, that's enough to piss people off. Don't mess with people's money like that, you know. He didn't
Well,
deserve. Don't take my words out of context. He didn't deserve to die, but you shouldn't do that.
no, never. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and they're
Absolutely.
relying on it. So I can imagine if he was doing that, which I suspect he was, of course they're going to be mad.
How many spatter stains do we have on the pillowcase? How many stains on the bed covering? There's a quote that one stain does not a pattern make.
I think that's a really good point that he brings up there. That,
but
what's I'm saying, like, how could you say even if that was his blood on the nightgown, one microscopic droplet, you can't say for a definitive purpose that was a splatter.
No, not
What's
at
the
all.
difference between a splatter and a drop once it's dried and you don't know? If there's a pattern, like this guy was just saying, then maybe you could prove, well, there's 3 or 4 all going in the same direction with the same tail feature.
Right.
And that demonstrates that there was some movement but you can't say that on one tiny little, just doesn't work that way.
Lack of integrity with forensic science testimony in general.
She's still locked up, by the way, as far as I know, unless she's passed away.
She's still locked up off of this little tiny little non-blood stain. That's amazing.
Right. Yep.
I mean, I do always say we need physical evidence, but we need more than just that. You know, you need corroborating evidence, right?
A micro dot, the gun that was used, didn't even belong to either one of them, and they
I
didn't
like how
investigate.
hold the picture up of the guy who's the gun it was registered to, and it's
right.
It's an inmate.
Right. It's crazy.
Don't you think there might be a small chance that the guy whose gun it was might have actually done it? No, it was the wife. We know it. How do you know it? Because the cold case file or the original investigators got it wrong, but we know better.
Right. Another case closed out in whatever county that is there in Texas.
Episode 3, interesting. You know, cadaver dogs come up so much in so many cases. I don't claim to know a ton about cadaver dogs, but again, they're a tool, not an evidence, right? They're what they do. They can find evidence, but they themselves are not evidence. If that makes sense.
That's right. And the key thing here is that a cadaver dog, if their results, if misused, is damning.
I mean, just like any tool, right? Any tool, if it's misused, will get you the wrong result.
And this is another case where another one of these cases that it was completely misused.
Hi, my name is Mary, and my niece was just stolen in a vehicle. Her father is really upset. Somebody must have hijacked him or something, and my niece is in the car.
DeAndre got carjacked. Somebody found themselves with a baby that they weren't supposed to have. From day one, they never believed us that our daughter was taken. I'm not as easy a target as he is.
Remember they showed you your phone calls?
Because he had a past, that, some things he had did when he was younger, a record. You can't go to court and paint me as a bad person that does bad things. I bake.
It pretty much told me that if they really want you, they're going to get you.
You know, we keep hearing the same themes over and over again, don't we, Jack? If they want you bad enough to get you.
Well, yeah, they've got the power. I mean, and short of having, some kind of 24-hour drone video footage of everything you do, you're screwed. And nobody has that. No one. So they got a target on his back. They didn't believe them from the outset. And understanding, and it gets into it a little bit later, we've talked about it many times, it's worth repeating. When somebody dies, within literally minutes, your body starts producing this death scent, and it's unique. It doesn't smell like you anymore. It smells like death. It smells like decomposition. And it's a separate thing than from what a live scent dog is going to track. That's one thing. But when the scent of death is just, it's not specific.
Someone made a decision to fly 2 dogs in from England.
I mean, I just gotta stop and say something first.
Yep.
Isn't it already fishy that you would hire some dogs internationally and fly them internationally?
To Detroit, it's insane. They've
I mean,
got human.
if you said
They've got those
Canada,
yard
if
dogs.
you're like, oh, they're just over the border in Canada.
Okay, I
Yeah,
could go with that.
they're
Yeah, no
good. They're
problem.
they're regionally known or whatever.
Just
Sure.
right across the lake. It's no
What are
problem.
you what are you doing flying someone in with their 3 dogs from England? What is England offering you? What is this expert? And I think that's another spot where you can just identify, you can just kind of sniff it out. No pun
Right.
intended.
Well, but it's true.
That's Morse, Regan, and Sherlock. It's very, very difficult to be able to transfer a body without leaving some sort of residual odor. I touch my car door. Everything that comes into contact with that cadaver is a potential source of intelligence value. A guy reported his car being hijacked with his daughter in it. We started searching. He responded to his vehicle, child's blanket, and the child's car seat. The likelihood was that he'd had some part in his daughter's disappearance.
How is he determining that just from a dog?
Well, I don't know. It's a good question.
That seems fishy as well. That seems a leap of faith to be like, well, we found it, so then therefore it must be the dad? Couldn't have been anyone else because we found it with the dog. Like, what logic are you jumping to there? I don't understand. Doesn't make any logical sense.
Is he there to, just find the truth? Or is he there to create a narrative, create a story for the prosecution? The steps that they go through and these different areas that they take their dogs, and well, there's a hit here and there's a hit here, and okay, but it's not specific to this child.
Right.
It's the scent of death.
Right.
But biological.
Anybody could have bled there.
That's right.
It could be left over from who knows what. You know what I mean?
That's right. Detroit Police Department was that this guy killed this child, for whatever reason. She's dead, and he drives by this incinerator and somehow carries her inside and chucks her in this incinerator. Now, of course, I'm not sure how that's possible because any kind of factory there was typically some security, especially when you get into a business like that where there's something really dangerous. You're not just going to walk in. You're not going to do it. But beyond that, they tested this guy's clothes with the dog. No detection of human decomposition. So how did that work out for him? How did he do that?
Don't believe this. Believe this.
Right.
Don't believe this. Believe this. Right? Suspend your belief like the other guy in the video. I think that's my favorite so far is the video guy. Don't believe what your eyes are. The lake is not there. I know you see a lake, but that is not real.
They said that DeAndre beat our daughter to death because she wet the bed, but they could not produce this urine soaked sheet. And all of my research and all that I can find, a hit requires physical corroborating evidence, and they were never able to produce anything of my daughter. Not a wet diaper, not a hair, nothing. So when they say this dog hit, on what?
She nailed it. Not denying that the dog hit on something. They're trained to do that. They're highly trained, these human detection.
Almost too good, right? They find even this tiniest little bit that's insignificant, but that comes across as a hit.
That's right. And stuff that's been around for, 50 years that's seeping up from the ground because the scent of death gives off certain gases, and these dogs can detect it. It's crazy. Their ability to smell. It's insane.
Death doesn't have a specific scent for each and every individual. If in fact that scent of death is transferable, then that scent of death should have also been on his clothes if in fact he removed that body.
The dog
however, didn't give a positive response to clothing that was worn by Mr. Lane, did it?
No, sir.
At some point, you've got to find a body in order for this to be proven.
Yes.
There you go, right there.
There you go. That sums it up perfectly right there. If you don't have the source, all you're detecting is some kind of decay from a human. That could be anything. It
You
means
need
nothing.
something more, and we were just talking about blood splatter, and you need something that corroborates the idea, right?
Definitive. That's right.
Right. The one thing I don't like of what he just said was the science of cadaver dog. I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of school here, but I don't think it's a science. Like, astrophysics is a science, right? Like, I think that's loosely using that terminology
A
because
bit.
there is, procedures and formulas and stuff, but it's not always repeatable. And you need that to call it a science. And dogs can miss something, they can misinterpret. You can't talk to a dog and you can't put a dog on the stand.
No.
And so there are limitations to it, right? Like I said earlier, it's a tool. It's a great tool to literally lead you in the right direction, but he can't make the case for you.
No. But like you said, it's not really a science. I don't think it is either, other than this end of it, of how much better that a dog's nose is than ours.
I mean, that's why it's a great tool, right?
That's
It
right.
literally, like, just think about the image of a law enforcement being led by a dog. Like, that's all it is. Lead you in the right direction, but it can't be the case.
No.
And you have to develop the evidence it finds. You can't just be like, oh, well, someone goes missing, and then a cadaver dog smells decomposing something in my car, therefore I must have been the murderer. Well, you don't know how.
No. There's no source.
I mean, blood gives off the same smell, and I think that's one of them that needs to be clear, is that blood is decomposing and has the same scent of death that a body would. And so
yes,
it's a gray area here. And again, you can't just rely on, the cadaver dog, and maybe that's the word. Cadaver dog is the problem here, because if a cadaver dog hits, that means there's a dead body there. But that's not really the case. Maybe we need a different terminology for this. Instead of calling him a cadaver dog, call him a human scent detective. Yeah, right. Or
human biological decay dog or something.
There you go, something like that. That doesn't give us that connotation of, well, it's a cadaver dog and it hit, so there must have been a dead body there.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. These areas can be so badly misinterpreted by a judge who doesn't quite get it if it's not really explained properly, and they got to be paying attention, and especially the jury. You don't want to lose your jury in explaining this process. I think this guy did a pretty good job of explaining it, kind of overall. The sin of death is not a human scent. It's completely different.
Bianca's middle name is Lily. And so I finally found the black lilies I've been looking for to plant for her. And in a few years, the entire western edge of my house is going to have these beautiful lilies.
A really touching moment in this episode to kind of lead us out of episode 3. And as you said earlier, she's the missing girl's never been found.
Nope, never been found.
And moving on to episode 4, Jack, where we talk about touch DNA, one of the more scientific related episodes here, moving back into the DNA science. And I think, the episode starts out very strongly talking about how DNA is misunderstood. And I think that's the case. The average understanding of what DNA can and can't do, I think, is misunderstood. And so you can address that or anything else in episode 4.
Well, I think that you're just touching directly on that. DNA became the gold standard, and they talk about this, the gold standard. So it's like, when you talk about, well, I've got some DNA, okay, that's great, but you have this lesser known and oftentimes lesser used touch DNA or transfer DNA. And this is where the science really begins to get murky. It can get murky with regular DNA too. Like if you have a mixture, they talk about the mixture of samples. But when you start getting into touch DNA, when multiple people have touched an atom, and so you got this big jumble, that can create a lot of problems and a lot of confusion.
Our DNA is going to be left behind on every surface that we come in contact with. The problem with DNA is that if you have a science that is misunderstood, that science becomes like magic. And that's what makes it very, very dangerous.
There's a joke among forensic DNA analysts where if you were to give 10 DNA analysts the same DNA profile, you're going to get 11 different opinions. When you have a DNA profile from a single individual, it can be very clear-cut. However, when you start talking about mixtures, it starts getting a little complicated. If someone robbed the house, they would have touched the doorknob. But how do you tell his DNA from all of the other people who've touched the doorknob? This is basically turning a rock-solid science into junk science. At that level, you just kind of go for it and you hope for the best. When we're looking at a mixture, we're trying to pull out individuals that contributed to the mixture. It's kind of like listening to two songs at the same time. Do you think you could identify 4 songs when they're all playing at different volumes? The same thing happens with DNA.
I think I could do it if he was my teacher.
No doubt. Very clear, very concise. Doesn't mess around with words. He's very direct. I really appreciated his explanation.
My understanding of DNA has definitely evolved over the years. I used to think that you find someone's DNA at the crime scene, that means they did it. And
Right.
basically what he's saying here is not only does that not true, but with transfer DNA, I mean, I go shopping. I use a shopping cart. They don't wipe the shopping cart down.
Nope.
Someone uses it after me and then commits a crime.
Yep. You're in.
Interesting science, though.
It is. And, the one thing about DNA, especially with, objects that are relatively easy to move, it's easily portable and transferable. So you can take an object that belongs to you, stick it in a crime scene nearby, and you could very well get roped into something you had nothing to do with.
That's right.
Unlike fingerprints. Fingerprints are extremely difficult to transfer.
Good point. That's why I think you can never rely on one single, point in a case. That's why you need corroborating evidence, right? You got
More
the
than one thing.
fingerprints, and you got the DNA, and you got the eyewitness statement, and one of those things alone won't do it, but the combination of them is what we're looking for.
Maybe a little video thrown in
Maybe
there.
a little bit of video in there. That'd be nice too.
Yep.
My first impression of the case was looking at the evidence. I'm like, there's reasonable doubt up the wazoo here. It was about who was there and who did what. So now they have this patrol, the Showroom organization, and their job is to protect this 30-block radius. And they put it out over the radio that somebody was breaking into cars within their neighborhood.
We went on a party bus, chilling, having drinks, and then from there I was on my way home. And I've heard someone yell something, whatever it wasn't nice. So I turned around to see who it was, and then that's when I realized I was being followed. Yeah. They started chasing me. I was running. They were running after me. I was being pinned to this gate by 4 other guys. Honestly, I thought they were trying to kill me or kidnap me. I had no idea what was going on. So we all started fighting.
At some point in this melee, he punched one of these guys in the face and broke their glasses. And once that happened, he had now assaulted a prominent member of Showroom. That was it. The gloves came off and people just laid into Taj.
It doesn't look safe.
So how many people are assaulting him?
There was like 20 Jewish men.
The main guy, he decided to like take his hands, hold my head, and like stick his thumb in my eye. What I remember is waking up in the hospital. Like, what happened to me? Where am I? Like, why am I here? When I got to the 90th precinct, the case literally said case closed on the file.
And it was only when the case was brought to the media, anything was actually done. The investigation was then reopened and they put a task force together so that nobody can say that this is a biased investigation.
We kind of thought of a ruse. We decided to get all new investigators, go back to these locations, and tell them that we're investigating a robbery of a member of their community. Lo and behold, we got the videos. A little investigative work.
That's quick thinking. That's a nice job on his part.
It was. Yeah,
very good.
I appreciated that. It's kind of a, I guess, can look at a defense lawyer and say, well, that's kind of a dirty trick, but is it? He's trying to defend he's zealously defending his client. He's looking for evidence. He's looking for truth. So I don't think it really was dirty. I think he did what he had to do. During this attack, this main person that jabbed his thumb in his kid's eye tore one of his sneakers off and threw it up on the roof of this building. This lawyer sent his investigators, and they found this damn sneaker.
Wow.
One of the perpetrators took Taj's sneaker off. And another witness said that they saw something being thrown onto the rooftop and see if there was a Nike Jordan sneaker up there. So I sent it out to the lab. Turned out to be a major part of that case.
Whoever's DNA is on there maybe would be the person who pulled the shoe off and threw it up on the roof. The only question I needed to answer was Mayor Hershkovich one of those people?
And who actually chased this kid down the road? And we can see in the video that there's, 10 or 15 of them.
When I shook your hand, there's a good chance that I have some of your skin cells now on my hand. And then if what I do is go grab a weapon, I could transfer some of your DNA onto the weapon. That's frightening. The OCME is the Office of Chief Medical Examiner. They're the largest forensic DNA lab in the world. When you test touched items of DNA, you tend to get less DNA than other sources of DNA like blood or semen or saliva. OCME was under a lot of pressure to put a statistic on their mixture samples. So they developed this software program in-house, the FST program. So with Mayer or any other suspect's case, this software program will spit out a number. I think every case where FST was used is problematic. And some of the most famous scientists in the world say the same thing.
They got an examiner from the OCME to come to court, and that examiner admitted on cross-examination all the issues and the problems with the test and the analysis. Like, they didn't even try to hide that because they couldn't. What they said is that despite all that, you don't understand what it is that we do, and we're able to do something that nobody else can do to get the results that we got, and our results are sound.
Wow.
It's really bad what they did, this forensic lab. It's the biggest one in the world. Can you imagine? I'm sure they're under enormous pressure. I get it, but to take this step of getting all these, I just almost want to refer to it as like a secondary DNA, that these items that they want tested, and to create a statistical tool and then to use that against someone when it's a statistic. With statistics, you can make anything work, but it's too broad. I'm sorry. It's just,
Generally speaking, it takes about half a nanogram of DNA to get a profile. But when you start getting too much farther below that, you don't have enough copies of DNA. At that point, they took one kind of decent sample and turned it into 3 shitty samples. And the results that you got were fairly chaotic. It had the possibility of being able to include anybody on this planet.
Statistics can be manipulated depending on what it is that the analyst is looking for. So they can provide results that can be misleading, even if they're mathematically correct.
Really, really eye-opening stuff here, man, about how, DNA doesn't lie, but the interpretation can, the methodology can. And so
Yes.
it's really important that whoever's crunching the data does it logically without bias.
And that's where the problem is that all these biases have been introduced into the system, into science, to influence the science.
That's
But
right.
it's interesting. A couple things before we close out is this kid. He lost his right. He's blind in his right eye now. Blind. He lost that eye. They discontinued this FST software. Thank God, that's gone. Because to me, it's just garbage. It's just complete trash. Another thing, this guy that got arrested, no one placed him there. No one. He's not in any of the videos they collected at all.
Well, what a cool series. You don't usually see them like this. Like they're, 4 episodes, one on each different kind of technique or, feature
It's almost,
of
it's almost
evidence
like four.
collection.
It's almost like 4 mini documentaries, right?
It is. It is. They're quite different. They feature a different case in each one of them. Very cool nonetheless, especially for people out there that are really into crime and are crime, documentary buffs. You want to check out Exhibit A for sure, just to I guess get your mind set straight on what these technologies and what these procedures actually can and cannot do.
I agree. It's a great series, and it's really good and helpful if you're, like Jeff said, if you're into the true crime genre, as it were, whether it be documentaries and or following current court cases. Forensics is part of it. It's just part of our lives now. It's ingrained in the system. Understanding how it's supposed to work and how it's actually been used, at least in the past. I mean, there's still kind of all kinds of screwed up stuff going on, but it's really good, really excellent.
Definitely recommend it for all you guys out there. So I guess that wraps up our conversation for today. So I will say that this is Documentary Club, a place for documentary lovers. I'm Jeff.
I'm Jack.
We'll see you on the next one.